Agus yes, Thomas Bjorist, Tá Fáilte Ruvalig, welcome one, welcome all. Back again with another patriotic chat. We've got Fergus and Karen and myself, Cahill. We're going to chat about a lot of the things are going from bad to worse around the border situation and the way the EU have decided to unilaterally invoke or threaten to invoke Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol, which they pulled back from. And it just shows that they're going to do that if and when they want to. And what we had the other day was that the guards are now deciding to fine people coming from the north down, which basically introduces your hard border right there. There's your hard border. So
it's hard to protect.
Yeah, we've been lectured to about that for 4 years since Brexit, and now it puts the north back into a kind of like an iron curtain has descended over it. You know, if you've got an Irish passport and you're living in the north, you're not allowed to travel to another part of Ireland. And it's like, so there's two. So Micheál Martin, one thing I would say is congratulations to him, because he's actually introduced two borders now. you've got a sea border, and you've now got a border between north and south.
That's even worse from the last time.
Yeah,
sure is.
Just could not make it up. I mean, I have a lot of things I wanted to chat about it, but anybody want to kick us off with that one? Fergus or Karen, what's the initial reactions to it?
Karen,
go ahead. Karen, what's your take?
Well, I mean, I had to look over it. I mean, obviously it's a complicated situation, but Brexit has been a huge disappointment. I mean, I would, for everybody. I mean, okay, they want to be independent, but it's stopping the basics. I mean, trade it still has to happen between the countries and Europe. So I'm worried about Sorry?
Brexit's not going to stop that. Brexit. I mean, the only thing that's hampering that is the EU's putting these rules in now, saying that they won't give free trade.
I know, and they're being bullies. But I mean, regardless of what you think about the vaccines, that shouldn't happen. And I'm worried that if they do that with vaccines, what will they do with food, the things we need? And you're seeing people who are maybe going onto Amazon or QVC and they can't get the things they've always got. So, like you said, you made a comment there during the week, it's going to make Brexit harder. And you're kind of right, because people see Brexit. You think, well, that's what's happening with Brexit. What am I going to do with Brexit?
Exactly.
And even if they might agree Go ahead.
It makes Brexit harder it makes it harder to argue, because people will say, it's quite calculated from the EU. They know they want to create a mess with the North, so that people will say, look, this is what Brexit, that's what leaving the EU is all about. So our exit's not going to be an issue, not going to happen. But they say the point is, that is not Brexit. What's happening in the North is not a Brexit.
No.
And it is a mess because it's not Brexit. Fergus, have you anything?
Well,
Karen, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think we've seen the half of it yet, because even the situation at the moment is only starting to bed down. They're starting to realize the type of paperwork that they need and how they're going to have these checks away from the border and all of that. We haven't seen the half of it. And I gather there's some kind of a dispensation, particularly with regards to food, sausages, for example, where they're kind of waiving the rules until the end of March, after which they will bring in the situation that they've always intended to bring in. And the British are well aware of this. This is something that's just, I don't think as customers we've seen the half of it. And in particular, it's going to bother us with regards to exporting things like cattle. I really just don't think we've seen the half of it. But I'm interested in your point where you said that this will make Brexit harder. And I suppose I hadn't really thought of it like that. And that's troubling in a way, because if you want Brexit, this is what it's going to look like.
Well, exactly. That's what they're going to say.
So they've an incentive there to make this, as you have just suggested, as difficult as possible. That's worrying. That's troubling. And I certainly think the caliber of what runs Ireland at the moment is we're not. I mean, we're tuppenny halfpenny to these guys. We're nothing to them. So we're just a very useful bullet in the gun, as it were. Very unfortunate analogy, but
I mean, I just think they're using Ireland, and they're abusing all this nonsense. There's a couple of great articles were written about it last week. it's the contempt that they show for Ireland is there for all to see. We're at the bottom of the list in terms of importance in the EU. It's a Franco-German mafia running it.
Oh, it is.
And they
Always has been.
Yeah, exactly. And they weren't even told. I mean, I made a joke during the week that Micheál Martin was told by Boris Johnson about this invoking of the article. But I mean, no, they weren't even consulted. And that's just how they think about Ireland.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard as well, Mairead McGuinness, this all broke last Friday, obviously, but Mairead McGuinness was quizzed on what she knew about this. And if I'm not mistaken, she said she knew nothing about it until after it had happened, which then begs the question, what's the point in being an EU commissioner? I mean, we put great store in having an Irish commissioner sitting in the EU Commission, but it's absolutely worthless to us if this is where we end up. Now, I think subsequently von der Leyen has issued a statement to the effect that she more or less is responsible for this. So perhaps Mairead McGuinness never knew, but you know, I don't know. I don't know that we'll be told the entire truth about what did happen.
To me, the threat is still there. The threat is still there. They've said that they have said that that threat is still there, and that they reserve the right to invoke that article if and when they see fit. Sorry, Karen, go on ahead.
No, I was just sort of thinking about you know, like our dependence on, say, the likes of English goods. And if you want to get the burial book or the clothes, whatever, that we still have to go to these places online or otherwise. And like, we need to be going back to, and I know you made a video there about a few weeks or maybe last year about Irish goods and buying Irish and supporting Irish goods and locally. If we move away towards having protecting the high street, the Irish retailer, whereas jewellery, books, whatever, it will stop that dependence. Because sometimes when I say I only buy Irish, yes, that's okay when you're going to buy your food. But if you want to buy a laptop, where'd you go?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, I'm a big fan of Apple products. That's all I have here, really. But if I want to avoid buying Chinese products, well, I can't buy. I mean, they make all the apples, as far as I'm aware. All the Apple products come from China. So me being on my moral high horse about the way they have behaved over in that side of the world, you know, I'm going to have to make choices about what I buy. And then we're always going to find some aspect of a product that we don't like or that we've got some kind of a problem with, whether it's morality or in the way they're made, like T-shirts and so on, or, as I say, Apple products. And then, of course, there's some chicken. I mean, you talk about food. I was stunned. For about a year or two, I was keeping an analysis of how much I was spending on Irish food. Now, I actively try and buy Irish food, and I could only manage 38% of my shop is Irish food.
That's very low,
and I'm trying to buy Irish food. You'd be amazed at what actually is and isn't Irish.
Yeah.
But one of the things that threw me when you have to root around, say, the frozen foods section, there are things like a Big Al's chicken bites or whatever. They come from places like Thailand and Ukraine and Brazil. I mean, how in the hell is it possible to send bits of chicken 8,000 miles from Brazil and sell them cheaper than a chicken that's from 80 miles up the road in Cappoquin or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, I had some experience.
This is crazy.
It is literally cheap. It is easier to bring stuff in from China at the minute than it is to bring stuff in from GB. GB is our biggest market economically. So, you know, when Ireland became independent, or 26 countries 100 years ago, it still dealt mostly with Britain. So whether you like it or not, Britain is our biggest trade partner. So why put friction down between it? And people keep saying, what's the alternative to this protocol? The alternative would be a light touch managing of the border around the border, which is what Enda Kenny had been discussing with the British and the Unionists. And it was jettisoned by Varadkar and Coveney. The fanatics just bulldozed that out of the way and came up with this narrative, you have to have a border in the Irish Sea. So there was they had been making good progress on that. So, I mean, there you have the border. I mean, the Garda have shown that they could manage some sort of border situation anywhere around there. It wouldn't have to be heavy duty, and either way, if any border put in would be by the EU, I'd prefer them not to put in any border, and so would the British. But if the EU insisted on putting a border in, and it would be their border, let them do it, and we'll see who the nice guys are. I mean, what about the Remainers like the Sinn Féin and the SDLP down with their sledgehammers? What do they think of the Garda now, putting in this border? I mean,
interesting.
Where is that?
Colin, I hadn't really heard about that before you guys were talking about it over the last day or so, and yeah, it's interesting. But one of the things as well that apparently is coming down the line is that we will now have the EU's Frontex, which is their border patrol, manning all of these. So in theory, when you fly into Dublin Airport, now I know none of us can really do that at the moment, but later in the year, when hopefully we start to get back to what passes for normal, the new abnormal, it in theory could be some guy from France who's at the Irish passport control wearing a uniform of Frontex. And this is something that absolutely, it bugs the life out of me. For the last few years when I fly, I go to the States a lot. I have family over there. Every time I fly back into Dublin Airport, there's two lines at passport control. One is for EU people and one is for everybody else. And I have to go into the EU people one, even though I've landed in my home country. So I don't know, this is just something that really niggles with me. So the idea of having some kind of German or French or Italian person, nothing personal against them, but to have them wearing the uniform of something that I absolutely object to is something that's going to really niggle with me big time. Anyway, but
it is going to be the EU that will be policing this. And what I think, that I wouldn't put it past that there would be any. How permanent is this checking at the border going to be now? We don't know. It could be this lockdown's been going on for a year. For all you know, this checking of people coming over the border by the guards and finding people, that could be in for 6 months. So that
might cause problems from an IRA point of view. It might instigate IRA, activity, or
But are they going to start putting infrastructure in? It's going to be policed by an EU southern official. And Fergus, I noticed your flag behind you, very good. But I would like to just make the point that some of the loyalists up the north have depicted Ireland. They've depicted Ireland. The UK is under the Union flag. Ireland is totally under the EU flag. So the flag of Ireland is not the tricolour anymore, unfortunately.
That's true.
It is the EU flag. It is the EU flag.
Yeah.
So that's the way to have it depicted, and they're quite right in that.
They're completely right in it. One of the things that I think people, we're all guilty of this, that we kind of fall for the myth. There's a myth about EU creationism, which is that the EU is the guarantor of peace on the European continent, which is completely factually untrue. I mean, NATO has done more to protect safety military security in the European continent since World War II. It hasn't been the European Union, although I do grant you that with the PESCO developments and so forth, in years to come, that will happen. And I think that the former president of the USA was an instigator to the way the EU is moving that way, because he called them out for a long time over the fact that they didn't pay their fair contributions to the NATO budget. So they went, fair enough, we'll get rid of NATO, we'll bring in this new European Union defence arm, and we'll get Paddy Irishmen to pay for it. Now, I know it was in the Lisbon Treaty, but it didn't really go anywhere until, of course, President Trump arrived on the scene and started rocking the boat and upsetting the European Union in particular. I mean, we all remember the video of him sitting beside Angela Merkel, and she said, "Are we going to shake hands now?" And he turned his back to her. I mean, that's what he thought of her, and he was, in my opinion, he was right. But of course, now they've got their boy in the White House, and it'll be business as usual for a while. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Ireland.
But it is turning a wee bit like it is. I don't know how far this border situation could develop. I mean, it's not beyond the realms possibility that it could become some sort of semi-permanent with with some sort of infrastructure, exactly what they said they wouldn't do. The British never threatened to do that and didn't do it. The EU have threatened it, and the Guards are now introduced. So I think it's a very negative development.
I think specifically in the Northern Ireland Protocol, there is a very direct reference to the purpose of the protocol being that there will be no security apparatus, is the phrase used, if I'm not mistaken, to describe, installations. In other words, checkpoints, barriers, or customs checks actually on the border. And that's something that I believe the Northern Ireland Protocol refers to. Or maybe it's the Good Friday Agreement. But
when you have the Garda checking people, when you have the Garda checking people and giving fines, that's a pretty hard border, in my opinion.
I take your point, but they do that in Dublin. I mean, isn't there a case where don't people, if you're found on a beach or whatever, there's nothing better to do?
I know, but then they have dancing to do. That's another point. There is a point, because they said specifically under no circumstances would there be any checking at the border. We were told that and now they're doing it. And it's just to go back to that point, Fergus. I was pointing to Senda Herman at the rally in November. There was no tricolour above the custom house when we were there, but there was the EU flag flying. So there you go. Karen, come on ahead. What's your input to there?
Oh, no, I was just going to say it's already showing in the graffiti, and I showed it a link there before we came on. Another one now against, the situation, and we've seen some safety checks at the ports in Larne and Belfast, threats against staff. So it's already starting. And then when you're talking about the free movement, I've seen 2 female guards in Houston Station. So I know it's a little bit different because it's not on the border, but the controls are there, and they're going to say, it's to do with restricting movement between north and south because of COVID. But you're right, Carl. You're right to be concerned about it, because they're going to bring it in under a different name.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be, it's nothing to do with north or south. It's just to do with the COVID thing. And we should be worried about it. I mean, I knew this was going to come because I did hear about it, and I'm surprised it didn't come in before. Because I know you were down in Ireland in Drogheda there a few weeks ago. With no problems. So now you can't come down for how long? For a few weeks.
You don't know how long. Unless we can find out from the Garda what exactly classes as essential travel or whatever.
Political activity, yeah.
Well, somebody was fined there only the last few days. They were clever. They created a letter saying from a so-called employer saying they're going to do engineering work, and they were caught out. It was very creative, fair play to them, but they're still caught out. I mean, what's wrong with going to Spain or to Lanzarote this time of the year? People go skiing at this time of the year. This is skiing season, so why people can't go on the holidays? We're actually going to become a situation where our movements are so restricted we can't actually leave the island at all. And when is this going to move? And when is this going to finish? And then we've heard Neil Friedker there in the last few days saying we mightn't even have a Christmas or summer holidays at all this year. So you can't go anywhere.
I just think that Boris Johnson lost out in the negotiations. He should have negotiated harder with Varadkar and the EU and says, look, we're not going to put a border in Ireland. So if you want to do it, it's up to you. But we can't have one at the between the Irish Sea, and we're not going to put one in Ireland. So it's up to you, and let them do it. And Ursula von der Leyen wrote a letter to the Northern Ireland Assembly about it. All her 3 points, in my opinion, were wrong. She said about ensuring no hard border in Ireland, but she could ensure it without having that protocol. She said to keep the peace, to protect the Good Friday Agreement. But that protocol, in my opinion, breaches Good Friday because it changes the constitutional position of Northern Ireland against the will of anybody. Nobody voted for that. Nobody voted at all to have Northern Ireland put into this protocol. People voted for Brexit, but people did not vote to have Northern Ireland put into this weird system where you're an EU protectorate and where the EU can now decide to chop and change, moving borders around at will. And we're going to lose out. Northern Ireland's going to lose out on the benefits of Brexit, thereby making our exit, as I say, a harder option. People will just say it's a harder argument for us to make. If Northern Ireland left the EU like Britain, and it will be a success. We could say, look at the success of the North, and let's just have our exit.
Yeah.
But then I suppose to go further into that kind of discussion, if, say, the mainland, so-called mainland of GB, or that it is GB, if they make a success of it, regardless of Northern Ireland, well, then in theory, we could still say, well, look, they've done really well with this. We should go that way too. Unfortunately, Northern Ireland is very much the tail wagging the dog here, because they, you know, they're being brought out of the EU effectively against their will. But, you know, they're the ones who have... The situation with managing Northern Ireland is what's giving the greatest difficulty to the Brits making a success of it.
I know, but it was a UK vote. It wasn't. Do you want Northern Ireland to stay or go? It was
Completely.
UK.
Yeah, completely.
And I think that's just been weaponized. That whole thing about
that's the phrase. The exact phrase is that they have weaponized the border, and it's one of the things. This book, which is essential reading for anybody interested in.
I have to get.
Seriously, get it. It's informed. It's very educational. But he makes the point that now he was one of the Irish team negotiating the Good Friday Agreement, and he makes the point that the European Union only came aboard that when it came time to sign it. So effectively, they had no involvement whatsoever, other than they recognised the agreement, and yet they crow about the fact they're interested in protecting peace in Northern Ireland. Good luck.
It's not like coming in at the last minute.
Yeah.
They were written into it. Nigel Farage made the point. They were written into it at the very last minute, just as a sort of a courtesy.
We better stick these guys in. Yeah.
But the negotiations were done with George Mitchell from America and all the parties in Northern Ireland, in the North, and nothing to do with the EU. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They're claiming credit for what they do. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I sat in on a video thing that Ray Bassett did in with Yale, some organization connected with Yale University in the States a couple of weeks ago, and he made the point that, and it's he doesn't really get credit for it, but the George W. Bush administration had a trade envoy. I think his name was Richard Haas, and he had a huge impact in getting the Good Friday Agreement over the line as well. So it wasn't just George Mitchell, but I'm sure George Mitchell is big enough to pass some of the glory around to other people as well. But I was stunned when I heard that, because I thought that the Republican Party really didn't give a hoot about Irish politics per se, but that's not entirely true.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to say is we were talking about the border and goods going back and forth to the mainland of the UK from Northern Ireland. The big problem is coming down the line, because there's no agreement yet on services, and that's the real key issue. Talking about trade, I mean, I think Ireland we only have trade with Britain of about 11 or 12% of our GDP now. It used to be something massive like 60%, but we've really kind of turned around on that. So it'll be really interesting to see. I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head, but I think it's only about 11 or 12% that we trade with the UK in goods. The bulk of our trade is with services. And I don't think that they're actually touched on in any of these agreements yet.
So it's not as much of Ireland's goods is done with Britain as we thought.
Right. I mean, I'd argue I could stand to be corrected on it, but certainly services don't fall under this stuff at the moment that we're all getting bogged down in. But trade in goods is what we really see. That's the food on our table.
I brought that up with the Fine Gael guy in the summer there in Donegal. He agreed that the beef and all the exports of livestock mostly goes to Britain and stuff, you know.
And it passes, in many respects, it passes through there via the land bridge onto the continent. But I don't know what the numbers are exactly. It'd be very interesting to dive into those and see the extent to it. I've never really done that other than reading the headlines that we all do in the media.
When you talk about services, are you talking about like, customer services, call centers, or
Banking,
you
things
banking?
like
Or,
banking, insurance companies,
right, okay.
lots of the money, and again, that's something I worked in insurance for a long time. It's something that always bothered me about the so-called single market. You and I, if I need insurance for my car, I got to ring up Allianz or whoever it is here in Dublin and
Yes.
get a quote and buy insurance. Those guys then pool all of the money that they get from all of the Irish customers and they reinsure that risk overseas. So they get the benefit of cheaper prices in, for example, Germany and Italy, the big markets, France and so forth. So they reinsure that risk overseas. We can't do that. I can't buy insurance in Germany
In
or
Germany.
France to drive a
Yeah.
car in Ireland. They don't allow that. So the single market, for all people crowing about how great it is, it actually doesn't work necessarily in the interests of consumers.
Yeah, that's true. So really, if we are part of Europe, you should be able to, if you see a cheaper insurance for your car or your house, you should be able to go to Germany or
Yeah,
Italy or France and get that. No problem.
if the single
We're not
market
part of the
is
Euro if we're
what
not
it
part.
is.
Yeah.
So this is, again, it's coming back to the optics of all of this. They talk about the single market. It doesn't really impact you and I at street level here because we're effectively stuck here. We can only buy and sell here. Same coming back to the flag. We all think we've got the Irish flag over us. Which way am I going here? There. But
I knew what you mean.
but the blue rag of the EU is actually far more powerful here than that is behind me. But we should have one of the things that I think we should do, and I know some guys did it in Cork. I saw a video on YouTube about it. We should have an EU Day, which is I think May the 9th or something like that, laughably. We should have an EU flag burning day. I know in Germany it's illegal. You can actually be prosecuted for it, but not the case here.
Right, that should be a good thing.
Yeah, I think that'd be.
We should the German flag out of the German case.
Yeah.
You're hardly allowed to fly the German flag.
Yeah, grabbed her own national flag and handed it off to one side and scowled at the fellow who waved it. I'd say he won't do that again in a hurry, I can tell you.
Mein Führer. But I mean, Germans are going through such a guilt complex about the war. They're just not. And that's what that's all about. They've just been plagued with. They've been forced to have that guilt about what happened during the war. In other words, the people won't be satisfied until the whole country's full of mass refugees. The Germans are gone.
I think they've tweaked that. I mean, the AfD in Germany are doing so well nowadays.
Right.
That they.
What percentage? What percentage are you talking about?
Don't know. Was it 19% or something? Either way, it was astronomical.
That's very good.
Compared and again in France, there's a huge Marine Le Pen, and of course Macron shot himself in the foot in the last week about the vaccine as well, because he was slagging off the AstraZeneca, which is effectively the British vaccine. And he said, "Oh, it's not really proven," or whatever. I don't know his exact turn of phrase, but effectively playing into the anti-vax argument, which is really something he shouldn't have done. And Marine Le Pen and her party, which used to be called, was it Front National? I think they may have changed the name. And her daughter, I think, is an up-and-coming politician there too. Right. But be very interesting because there's a lot of regional type elections coming up across the EU this year. Be curious to see how they all pan out.
And where is the party from Marie Le Pen? Where is she in France now?
Well, they're second to the. She done all right in the presidential election. There was a runoff between her and Emmanuel Macron, who, by the way, when he won, came out on stage to the EU anthem. He didn't come out to the Marseillaise, which I thought was an absolute stunning revelation of where his loyalties lie.
Yeah.
Anyway, the video is there for everybody to see. It is what it is. I'm just reading some of the comments.
About, from what I saw from that, a lot of people who I know that are staunch Remainers, even they were very critical of that. They weren't happy with the EU, so they're big about the unilateral invoking of the. So there's a wee bit of creaking or around the edges of discontent about it, even amongst Remainers. There's critics there, and you did see some of those articles did say that Ireland's going to have to get much tougher with the EU, and Micheál Martin did say mistakes were made, so they need to start going further than that. But this shows that there's a little bit of criticism. Fergus.
I was going to say, Cathal, that Andre wrote an article. I'm just looking at it here. Our place in the new European pecking order is now clear. Now, he, interestingly, he is a researcher for the European People's Party, which is Fine Gael's grouping in the European Union Parliament. And so for someone like him to write, there's some painful truths in it for Europhiles. And I think therein lies a great opportunity for us, because people will see that they're not all they're cracked up to be. But then Irish people, don't forget, 10 years ago or so, got a very rude awakening on our place in the EU pecking order. And yet we very happily debase ourselves with approval levels towards the EU of something like 90%, according to European Movement Ireland propaganda, which comes out once a year. They gladly report it's staggering the amount of support there is for the EU in Ireland, is the gist of it. So Irish people need a lesson.
Yeah, I'll add that article into the comments. And that one is that guy McKeown, is it, that wrote the one about he's on Channel 4 BBC. He wrote it. I had it up on the WhatsApp. He put an article about this, the contempt that the EU showed to Ireland about making that decision.
Yeah.
But it's going to come home to roost. I mean, I don't know down south, but in the north, if you order something off Amazon, it comes from the UK, and a lot of them are saying we're not delivering to Northern Ireland free. So there need to be a big charge, or you'll just not get it.
Mm. Well, I saw somebody commented today that there's a report Amazon are actively looking at a huge new site near Baldonnel, which, could be driven by the expectation that this was always going to happen. I don't know, but if they're building a warehouse, but they refer to
a data centre in Drogheda.
A data centre,
being built, in Drogheda at the moment. It's been built.
This seems to be some kind of a place for physical boxes of product. So, and if they're building it right beside Baldonnel, it begs the question: what airport is it flying into?
Yeah. Mm.
Well, Baldonnel's where all the new arrivals seem to be flying into Ireland these days, but maybe we shouldn't go down that rabbit hole tonight.
But I'm more concerned.
Never done that before. We never talked about any immigration in this channel before.
Never. I certainly never mentioned it until tonight.
No, we never mentioned it. No, Karen, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I'm more concerned about, if you want your computer, you will have to go outside. You have to move away from an Irish supplier. We need to get retailers thinking about how can they supply the goods that the English are supplying and the Americans are supplying. So we want an Irish PC world. We want an Irish, and they're here and not elsewhere. And like you're talking about your food, you talked about 38% of your food is Irish compared to the rest of it. So if you want to buy meat, it's Irish. But if you want to buy something else, something Danish, whatever.
Biscuits, for example.
I go to a shop in Drimna every week, and it's a greengrocer. We don't see enough greengrocers, and they're Irish. They get their food locally in Dublin. That's fine, but it's local and it's not travelling very far. So we need to maybe push that scheme or a scheme or project that greengrocers are more pushed to the front. Like supermarkets are fine, but they buy foreign as well. So we need the greengrocer on our high street again. The high street is being wiped out. And I think about this before we came on. Like we see all these retail parks and they're wiping out the high street as well. We need to kind of maybe bring back the high street. I mean, when I was growing up, Drogheda was a thriving town. The main street was the place to be. You didn't have these retail parks. So they're pushing the shoppers away from the streets. Like you're the same in Dublin. You have Blanchardstown, you have Liffey Valley. We have Tala, places like that. So we need to kind of push the retail back in the streets, back onto the main street, and make that a shopper place again. Even Grafton Street is
here's a question.
and O'Connell Street is gone.
Here's a question for you, Karen.
When
you talk about we need to get people back on the high street, yes, you're correct. But one of the problems is, and this is driven by the fact that there are these large retail parks, everybody can drive there and park.
I know,
But nowadays, you can't drive. I haven't been in Drogheda, I'm ashamed to say, in a long, long time. But, I doubt you can drive down the main street.
No.
And even pull into one side. There might be a big multi-story car park, but there's probably only one, and not everybody can park there. So people do go to these retail parks. So it has to be driving people to the main street or to the high street is the solution to this. But it's still more difficult.
Public transport better. I know last year the mayor in Drogheda here, he tried to kind of pedestrianise, for one weekend, and it failed miserably because it was planned badly. But if you plan it better and make it where Drogheda is, some days it's pedestrianised, where people can go in and relax and have the coffee, have the shopping, and it would draw in the people. But the business went against it because they felt sort of they were losing out, which I understand. But it has to be a good mix where the people can do their business, the retailers don't dominate the shop, and get the greengrocer more involved in the population of the business, not shoved in the corner somewhere. So I find a lot of the time the greengrocer, they're doing it once a week in a market, and then you have to do it once a week. That's not good enough. The greengrocer should be there open 7 days a week, and that's how they make their money, and it's healthier. It's it will draw farmers can go and sell their goods through the greengrocer, and it keeps it local and Irish. You're not going buying food in the Iceland or in supermarkets that's unhealthy. It's coming from a different country. I don't want to buy vegetables that are in Denmark. I don't want to buy vegetables that's in France. I want to buy vegetables that's in Ireland. I don't care if it's coming from Cork. It's in Ireland and it's local.
There's one. You are 100% correct in what you say, but there's a difficulty in, for example, products like vegetables. The phrase accountants use is value added. There's very little. They cost so little that there's nothing in it really for the state to be producing those in Ireland, for example. If you can get them cheaper from France or Spain or whatever, well, why not? What we want is the high value added products being made here in Ireland. The ones where, the jobs that pay 100 grand a year, for example, as opposed to the jobs that pay 10 grand a year. And that's one of the difficulties with fulfilling what you're rightly saying is a problem.
Yeah. Either that or, I was talking to someone last night and she started renting an allotment in Dublin with two other women. And the reason why they're doing it, not only from the health point of view, but they're worried about the supply of food. And it's only costing them €47 a year, which is nothing. You'll make your money because you're growing your own food. You're not going back to a place where, you're going to a supermarket and you're buying something that's not healthy. It's probably in a shelf life for probably 3 weeks instead of a few days. And you're buying something that's full of God knows what. So you're growing your own food, hot sprayed and everything else. So I'm just saying, I understand what you're saying. The government wants somebody that's going to produce taxes for them, and the money is generated. But health is much more important in the sense that you want the population to be healthy. And
you can't have much more of a hard border when you're introducing a vaccine border. That's a pretty unhealthy border.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree. The issue what happened with the vaccine, that could happen with food, Colin.
Absolutely.
I know, and in the beginning of all this, I seen, and it was the media that done it. They put up footage of supermarkets being empty in Northern Ireland. Now, how long that lasts for, I don't know. Is that still going on? Is it difficult to get food in supermarkets?
Well, they're talking about putting extensions to the grace period. So in other words, they're kicking the can down the road. But why not just stop the whole bloody thing? Because the thing's clearly not working. Yeah. But I'm sort of conscious about going too far over the half hour, guys, because I think that's what's best for sharing it on other platforms. Does anybody have any other specific points to raise on this?
Can I just on this? I just want to quickly say Rory Mulhern just commented that
He said,
10 years EU approval rate is shockingly
Yeah.
high. One of the things I'm sure Rory might agree with me is that it all depends on how you ask the question as to what answer you get.
Yeah,
And
exactly,
the people, those surveys are funded by the European movement in Ireland. So, you know, they've all the money in the world to create the necessary survey to engineer the correct result.
They can tailor the question whatever way you want.
Yeah, I know I'm a cynic, but Red Sea would probably not bite the hand that feeds them. But look, it's a hugely interesting topic, Cathal. All of this with the border and how we're going to manage that.
But these approval, these surveys that you're saying, they can, if they can tailor the question whatever way they want, they could ask it in such a way, as you said, that that you said, do you like the way the EU does this, or would you rather be in the EU than leave? People are probably going to say yes, stay in the EU. But if you asked it in a certain way, that what way do you think the EU dealt with that recent thing about the border or the vaccine? Were you approving of that? They would say, no, I didn't approve of that. And they could get a much different answer. You could have your headline again, EU, massive disapproval for EU in the way they handle that, you know, so it's just the way they spin it.
Plus the fact, as somebody who has worked with statistics and all of that sort of stuff, what you could also do with those is deliberately choose a target audience for your survey who are, say, 18 to 21 years old. You know, they've got their free travel, which the rest of us all pay for. They can go on their Eurorail card. And, you know, you ask the right people, you're going to get the right answer. If you asked a load of people who, for example, had, I don't know, you could,
you get somebody, you get different.
But because
answer.
it's a paid survey, it doesn't have to be representative. I mean, you know, you're going to ask the questions to get the right answer.
Yeah,
that's not a survey.
No, it's not. But,
like, you know, I mean, you do a survey.
Call it what you want.
See, I'm also conscious, guys, that it's Saturday night and everybody's in the pub, so that's maybe why our viewers aren't so big.
That's where I should be. That's where I should be. Anyway.
Do you remember those days when people used to actually go out to the pub? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Back when I was What? It's almost strange now. I mean, I was driving there earlier and I saw somebody actually not wearing a mask on the street. And I said to myself, it's actually strange to see that now because nearly everybody is wearing it, you know.
Yeah, around where I am, nobody's wearing them.
Oh, this day last year, we were voting.
Oh, really? It was
and we were there for a drink. Imagine that. We were there for a drink in Black.
Was it this day last year? Yeah.
In a pub
this
or under
last year.
Saturday. That's right. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wow.
And we would have been in Dundalk the next day, and we went out for a drink, Cathal. A drink.
Right.
Imagine.
That's right. We went up to the what used to be called a hotel. Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Those days, you know.
Do you know the last beer I had? No, I like a pint, but the last beer I had in Dublin, I actually had to sit outside Dublin City Hall and drink sitting on a bench. There you go. Talk about drinking like a pie ball. It's unbelievable. Anyway, that's what we're reduced to.
It's not what Patrick Pearse and Michael Collins had in mind for us, was it?
No.
Ireland for the Irish.
I never heard of that now.
Right.
That'll get me into trouble.
I know quoting Pearse will get you into trouble now, you know.
It will, yeah.
Or Devil Earth.
And having that flag behind me as well, but sure.
Yeah, I know. Good one that's a good one for yes, have that one again. It's like we know where we are. Right.
And that's the question as well. You know the way we're kind of canvassing up in Belfast, and you're always saying the loyalists are kind of nearly on par with what we feel about Europe, and they're quite conservative, you know, in Irish life. Does this situation help us in some way in canvassing in the north from now on? Considering that they're now,
It's a
I
good
mean, I'm not
question.
talking about violence, I'm not talking about that, I'm
No,
just talking
it's a
about
good
you.
question, but it's a double-edged thing as well, because there's a lot of anger in that community towards what's going on. If you go in waltzing in with your leaflets, they're going to look at you as just, a Republican. And no matter if you say, "Oh, you're not in favor of the EU," but they're not going to say it like that. So I'm not so sure. I mean, we saw Connor try to do a bit of that, and he got short shrift going in somewhere, and So I think it's a sensitive one. It's very sensitive.
It's hard. Do you think it's going to be harder now?
I don't know. That argument is on the long finger. I think at the minute it could be a bit provocative to be trying to sort of get votes over it. You mean you could get votes, yeah, but it's not going to be. It's not guaranteed. Yes, you could.
But maybe we change our message then. I know you have an Ulster, leaflet, and we've got text and all the rest of it. But if we change, like we bring in the thing with the NI protocol and Article 2016, that we say, well, hang on a second, look what's hurting you, and we're in agreement with that. And look what's happening with the Gardaí being on the border now, and we're told we never have that again.
Well, some people suggested that you drop the name Irish Freedom Party and make it Freedom Party, but I don't want to start that. That's a different. That's neither here nor there. I mean,
it's just that I'm just thinking.
We're considering starting next year. I mean, the DUP are under pressure from some people who don't like what they've done, but some people are saying that Sinn Féin are still going to do quite well, and it's getting votes from that area where we might be wanting to.
Oh, okay.
Well, we could try and get votes, but it's for down the line.
Right. Okay. No, I'm just thinking.
It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy.
No.
But we could get votes. We could. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, but we'll drop it. We'll finish it there, guys. Thanks very much, Gurmeen and Maya. And
thanks, folks.
We'll see what way it goes.
Right.
Could you and Keela till next?
Yeah.
Somebody's just put a traditional. Rory's put a good question. Even though we agree with traditional loyalists on many topics, once called IFP, they will not vote for us. I'm inclined to agree with that. Although I was talking to one guy from the unionist community. Remember, you were there, and once they see the flag,
yes, I know who you're talking about.
They tear it up. But once you start trying to set their policies, they actually do come back and say, "Well, okay, fair enough." They'll initially think they're Sinn
Féin. We're not the Shinners. That's the.
We've got work to do on that, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. It's not impossible, but it's not going to be an immediate fix.
No. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we'll leave it.
Good night. See you, White.
We're all going down to the pub now. All right. See you, White.
Okay.
Good night, folks. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thanks.
Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good night.
All the best. All the best.